They were daughters of silence, but silence never meant safety. In the hills above St. Mercia, behind a locked gate and ivy-choked walls, the Redgrave Convent held 37 women in eternal prayer. Not a single one is buried in consecrated ground. This is not just a story of religious devotion, but of rock wearing a rosary, and how a family's legacy of sin was hidden in plain chant. In the hills of St. Mercia, the mist does not rise, it waits, hung like a gauze curtain above the valley floor, never lifting, never breaking, just resting. And beyond it, where no roads dared run straight, a clearing once carved itself out of the earth, as if something beneath had pushed up from below. A field, flat and brittle, flanked by black pines and narrow, windless air. It was here, in 1874, that the Redgrave family gave a gift to God. They were not poor, nor modest. The Redgraves were a lineage of bankers, wine merchants, and quiet mourners, every generation losing someone too young, and too often they did not speak of grief. They tithed it, a 10-acre parcel, secluded, cold even in June. Their letter to the Archdiocese was brief. We offer this land to the Church for the purpose of penitential shelter, that something holy may finally grow from ground that has known only failure. No reason was given, but the implication hung there like the mist. They wanted something to be forgiven. The land had never grown wheat, or barley, or even moss. Locals called it God's mouth, a field that swallowed seed, sun, and prayer alike. And yet, in November of that same year, a group of 12 sisters arrived from the south, quiet women in heavy veils, each carrying no more than a bag, a crucifix, and a vow. No names were given to the townspeople. No services were held. Only a bell was raised. Cast in bronze, etched with no words. They called it the Convent of St. Mercia, but that was not its true name. The structure they built was not like the stone chapels of the old country. It was angular, unornamented, no spire, no stained glass, no crucifix outside, just a square chapel, whitewashed and windowless, with a single oak door, sealed with 4 iron nails. The farmers who helped raise the beams said the walls wept, that when the morning sun hit the southern side, the white stone bled clear water. Others said it was the lime curing, but not all believed that. One worker refused to return after the second day. He claimed he heard voices in the empty room before the roof had even been set, chanting, too slow, too close to the ground. But he drank, and men who drink hear many things. At the Redgrave estate, no one spoke of the convent again. The family made no further donations. They did not attend the opening. They did not write. In fact, they left St. Mercia altogether within a year. And then ... the bell began to ring. Not on Sundays, not at dawn, not in accordance with any calendar known to the diocese. Sometimes it rang at 3:13 in the morning, sometimes just before thunderstorms. Once, during a funeral in the town below ... a child's funeral, it rang 13 times, though no hand was seen on the rope. The townspeople said nothing, but many stopped looking uphill. One priest, Father Combs, attempted to visit the convent in 1876. He was received by a lay sister at the gate. She gave him no name, and when asked about the nature of their rule, she replied simply, "We keep vigil." He stayed less than an hour, and when he returned, he would not say what he saw, only that the Redgrave donation had been received in silence. Years later, his journals would be found. The pages between 1874 and 1877 were torn out, but something wasn't right. By 1879, rumors spread that the convent was no longer receiving supplies from the church. No letters came. No tithes were sent. The Archdiocese, when questioned, claimed the convent was fully cloistered and under the rule of divine silence. But bread still arrived, delivered weekly by a mute hired boy from the valley. Each time he came back, he said the same thing. They smile, but they never blink. No funerals were ever held. No baptisms, no confirmations. And still the bell rang. Inside the convent. No one knows what prayers were said. No masses were recorded. No visitors logged. But the light in the chapel windows, faint as it was, never failed. Only once, in the winter of 1880, did the smoke stop rising from the chimney. A merchant passing through the valley said he noticed it. He lingered by the gate for nearly 20 minutes, then left. 3 days later, the smoke returned, and the bell rang again. Years passed, and the Redgraves remained, gone. But their land had not it had grown something. Not wheat, not salvation, only silence. And in silence, something waits. The gate opened just after dawn. Mist still curled at the chapel steps, thick as wool, unmoved by breeze or bell. And through that low gray veil, a carriage appeared, its wheels, hushed in the damp gravel, the horses neither shivering nor straining. Inside, a woman, alone. She stepped down without assistance, dressed in mourning black, thick gloves, no veil. Her hair was hidden, her eyes not. She carried no suitcase, only a single wooden box, roughly the size of a tabernacle, lacquered red, painted with gold vines. No hinges, no keyhole, the lid sealed, flush, as if never meant to open. No one met her at the gate. No other sisters approached, yet she did not knock. She waited. Precisely 13 minutes, then entered when the door unlatched from within. Silently. Her name was Sister Agnes. She was not young, not old, her face somewhere in between. Griefless, but not peaceful. And she did not speak, not when spoken to, not in confession, not in prayer. The locals would only learn her name from the parchment mailed to the diocese 6 weeks later. An amendment to the convent's founding registry, signed not by her hand, but by another sister. And next to her name, in small, neat Latin, Viduata, signed Kroll, widowed, childless. Some said she had once been a governess. Others, the bride of a land magistrate lost in the canals of Ghent. No record matched, no family ever visited, but everyone remembered the box. When deliveries resumed that spring, the bread boy said it sat at the foot of the altar. Untouched, but newly lit by candles. Not wax candles, he said, but thick red tapers, like the ones used in morning masses. He called it a coffin. He never came back. Within a month of her arrival, a convent made a quiet announcement. The chapel, grounds, and interior cloisters were now closed to all men. No exception for clergy. The bishop expressed concern. He sent a letter. No reply. Then another. Still silence. He ordered Father Combs, the same priest who had visited 2 years prior, to return, investigate, and, if necessary, revoke the convent's independent rule. Father Combs refused. The bishop sent another priest in his place, a young man ordained less than a year, earnest, apologetic. He arrived at the convent on the first Friday in May. He did not knock. He waited. At precisely noon, the door opened. Not wide, just enough to reveal a single hand. Gloved in crimson cloth. It held a note, nothing more. The priest took it, bowed, and returned to his carriage. The note read, "No men beyond this point. The vow of isolation has been assumed. The dowry has been accepted. We are now of the Redgrave estate." No explanation, no signature. But the phrase Redgrave estate was unfamiliar and troubling. The bishop attempted to follow up. No response. And so the convent. St. Mercia, now silent. Drifted further from the church's reach. Meanwhile, something changed inside. The bell no longer rang at random. It rang at 6:06 every evening. 6 tolls, sharp, always at dusk. Travelers said the windows, once dark, now glowed red behind heavy curtains. Some claimed they saw shadows move across the wall. Too tall for the women they remembered. Too slow, and never alone. A former carpenter, once hired for the convent's early construction, made a quiet visit. He claimed he had forgotten a ledger in the chapel basement and wished to retrieve it. He was turned away by a sister who did not remove her veil. When he asked her name, she said, "We speak as one now." He pressed again, and Sister Agnes? She paused, then replied, "She's inside the dowry." He left, confused, disturbed, and never spoke of it again. Weeks passed, then months. The chapel door, once occasionally opened for supplies or stray travelers, remained bolted from within. Even the hired delivery woman, who now left baskets at the gate ... stopped hearing footsteps behind the door. Only the bell remained. 6:06, 6 tolls, and then silence. One winter night, a storm struck the hills. Lightning split a pine not 20 feet from the chapel wall. The fire spread quickly. Locals, seeing the glow, rushed uphill. Axes, buckets. By the time they reached the clearing, the flames had died on their own dot. No water was seen. No damage to the chapel. Only the scent, strong, metallic ... like burnt copper dot, and something else. The red box now sat outside the chapel, at the foot of the stone cross dot. No candle, no cloth, only frost gathered at its base, in the shape of a handprint. The next day, it was gone, and the bell rang 6 times, each one louder than the last dot inside the town. Dogs howled, children cried in there. Sleep ... and one man ... A deaf mason who had not heard a sound in over 30 years claimed to have heard a woman humming in his dreams. He remembered the melody. He said it was a lullaby, but something wasn't right. He said the final note didn't end. It held, like a breath waiting to be let go ... and when he woke, his fingers were red. Every nail split. He had tried to open something, but could not remember what. The next morning, he walked uphill, alone. He was never seen again, and the bell did not ring that evening ... not once. Only silence, and the cold, and the empty field where nothing ever grew. Snow gathered unevenly on the chapel roof, not in drifts, but in narrow lines, as though something below had shaped the cold from beneath ... It was January of 1881, when the first name disappeared. Sister Imelda entered in the convent's registry in 1874. Healthy, 30-3 ... and then ... No further mention. No note of illness. No transfer. No death. Her name was quietly scratched out in the diocesan copy of the roster. No signature. No reason ... By spring, 2 more names had vanished, and by year's end, the number had reached 6. But no funerals were held. No caskets ordered. No telegrams sent. Only a new name appeared ... in red ink, written not in the registrar's hand, but in uneven Latin script, et nos adhuc cantamus, and still we sing. The bishop's clerk flagged the record as irregular. Bishop did not respond ... and in St. Mercia, the bell began to ring at new hours, not just at dusk, as it had before, now at 2:44 a.m. or 11:11 in the morning, times that held no liturgical meaning, but they came regularly, precisely, always 6. Tolls, never more, never less. A traveler from Calais, staying at a nearby manor, noted in his journal, "The bells disturb my sleep. They do not sound human. There is no echo, no harmony, just insistence." He left after 2 nights, and yet the deliveries continued. Flour, linen, candles. No sister ever retrieved them in view of others. The baskets were taken only after the road was emptied ... and then ... In the winter of 1883, a coffin was found ... not in the chapel, not in the cemetery, but downriver ... drifting ... unsealed. Empty ... the undertaker identified it by the woodwork ... a custom commission from a carpenter hired by the convent years prior. He remembered the order. He remembered only one instruction. The box was to be soundproof, but something wasn't right ... inside. The walls were scratched, dozens of marks, not from nails, But from teeth. The local constable attempted to investigate. He was turned away at the gate. The sister who met him, small, pale, with ash on her collar, gave no greeting. When he asked for Mother Philomena, she responded calmly, "She's resting." When he asked how many sisters remained, she said, "All who are needed." And when he asked about the bells, she smiled, just briefly. And said, "They ring only when asked." The constable made note of it, but no charges were filed. No crime had been proven. And still, the names vanished. By 1887, 19 sisters had been removed from the rolls, not buried, not released, not seen. Their families wrote letters. Most were returned, marked recipient unknown. Some were never answered at all. One brother, Charles Devens, traveled from Arras to see his sister. Sister Heloise. She had joined the convent in 1876. He arrived at dusk. The chapel bell rang just as he crossed the main field. He described it later as louder than thunder, but slower than breath. When he reached the gate, he found it open. No one inside. No lights, no sound. The chapel door was unlatched. He stepped in. Dust lined the pews in thick furrows. The air was still, but in the choir loft. Where voices once sang, there was only dust. So much dust, more than could have gathered in a week or a month. Only one place was clean, the altar, white linen, a single candle, UNLIT. And behind it. A row of veils, hung like banners. 19 of them, each veiled cloth pierced with a single nail. And above, scratched into the stone in crude Latin, they were enough. He ran. He told the local curate. The curate sent word to the bishop. No reply came. And the next day, when Devens returned with others, the veils were gone, the altar cleaned, the dust swept, and the bell rang. At 2:44 m. As it always did. By then, the town below had learned to ignore it. Windows were shuttered, clocks left unwound, and every child was taught a single prayer, never printed in any catechism. Let them sleep and let them sing. Do not ask for anything. Eyes closed tight and breath held low. Past the hill you never go. No new sisters joined the convent after 1888. And yet, the bell never stopped, and the windows still glowed. And deliveries were still taken, but no one saw who took them. Only that, by morning, they were gone, even in snow. No footprints, no drag marks. Only silence and dust. Where the choir should be. The trees along the convent road stood unnaturally still that spring. No bloom, no birdsong, just the dry whisper of wind moving through branches too stubborn to leaf. By 1892, St. Mercia had stopped sending clergy to the convent. Only lay couriers now. Hired men, briefed only to deliver, never to enter. One of them was Martin Gauthier, 26, clean record, parish raised, a part-time sacristan, known for his handwriting and quiet manners. He was not from St. Mercia. He did not know the stories. His first run was on a Tuesday. His route, 3 stops, 2 hours on horseback, cart full of provisions, wine, flour, wax. He was given a ledger and told to document each delivery with a time, a brief note, and a signature. When possible. His handwriting was even, spaced, clinical. His last entry reads, arrived St. Mercia Convent, 4:12 p.m., fog low, gate unlatched. Then, nothing. No timestamp, no note, no return. Martin Gauthier was never seen again. 3 weeks later, his satchel was found by a shepherd boy half a mile from the convent gate. Inside, the ledger, dry, untorn. But the final page was strange. The writing stopped midline. In the middle of the word, approached. The ink trailed off. In a diagonal, the courier dispatch records showed he had arrived. The supplies were gone. No complaint was filed by the convent. Only one thing was recovered from the chapel grounds by the bishop's appointed investigator, a scrap of cloth caught on a nail in the gate. pale gray, rough spun, stiff with dew and wax. He brought it back to the parish, left it in a drawer. That drawer was never opened again, but before the silence, before the vanishing, there was the road, and the cart, and a journal Martin kept for himself. It was found years later, hidden in the lining of his travel bag. His sister donated it to the parish archive in 1913. Inside, 11 pages are written in a tighter hand, not the calm lock script of the official ledger, but faster, personal, the writing of someone beginning to feel watched. He begins, "I don't like it up here. The trees are wrong. There are too many, but they cast no shade." On his third delivery, he writes, "No one answers when I call, but the gate is never locked, always open just enough, always expecting." On the 4th, the baskets are lighter each week. I don't think they're eating, but the final entry, the one dated April 3rd, 1892, is what remains most disturbing. He writes, "I knocked. No answer. Was about to leave when the door creaked. She stepped out. He doesn't name her, only describes tall, taller than me, too thin for her height, veil over her face, gray, not black, hands folded but still, like they were posed. She didn't speak." He continues, "I said hello. I said I had the delivery. She didn't move, but the door behind her opened farther. No one there, just dark." And then, written lower, the final lines, "Her face. I think I saw ... double quotes, and nothing more. The ink runs ... not from water, but pressure, as if the pen snapped against the page. The page itself is unmarked. No blood, no torn fibers, only the sense of interruption, like a breath cut off mid-inhale." 3 theories were offered at the time. 1. He fled, took the supplies, sold them, disappeared to the coast, but his coin purse was untouched. 2. He fell into the river, drowned, but there had been no storm and no current near the convent road. And the 3rd theory, the one that was never written, was whispered only once, that he went inside, that the door behind her was not empty. And that something stepped back to let him follow. No warrant was ever issued, no search made. The bishop, when pressed, replied in writing, "There are places the church must let remain silent." But something wasn't right. 2 years later, another courier passed the chapel at dusk. He did not stop. His delivery had been reassigned to a neighboring town, but he noted a figure behind the chapel gate. Tall, still, wearing gray. She turned as he passed, not hurriedly, not angrily, just turned and tilted her head. The courier did not return to work after that day. He wrote only one thing in his resignation note: "She doesn't speak, but she hears." Since then, no one has claimed to see her again. But the veil, gray, coarse, and folded at the chin, has become a part of local lore. Children, when dared to climb the convent hill, are told to look for her shape among the trees. None have ever admitted seeing it, but none stay long. And the chapel bell, though now muffled by ivy and time, still rings. Sometimes at dusk, sometimes at 4:12, 6 tolls. Always 6 ... and never an echo. Snow does not melt evenly on consecrated ground. Even in the thaw of late March, the chapel at St. Mercia kept its frost, as though time moved slower here, or simply stopped. In 1895, the oldest priest in the diocese was called out of retirement, Father Jacknet, 82, nearly blind, fingers curled from arthritis. He had not held Mass in 4 years. He was not expected to again, but on the morning of March 19th, a letter arrived, delivered by hand, no return address, no stamp, the envelope sealed in red wax. The contents, a single sheet, Latin, mostly, a few lines in French, one sentence circled in black ink: "To ease service in terra rubra. You are servant on red ground." The bishop would later deny knowledge of the letter, but Father Jacknet did not ask permission. He simply rose, put on his vestments, and took the path uphill, A local altar boy, Emmanuel Ferret, was asked to assist him. He would later recall the journey in a soft, broken voice. Recorded in 1943, the trees made no sound. No birds, no breeze. Just the crunch of our boots and that smell. Like rusted coins in warm water. They arrived just before dusk. The chapel door opened without a knock dot inside. Candles. Hundreds. Floor to ceiling. Some wax. Some tallow. Some too red to name. But they burned clean and silent. The air was thick with clove and something else. Old velvet. Iron. Decay. The sisters stood already assembled. Not seated. Not kneeling. Just standing. All of them wore veils. Not one lifted her eyes. Their hands clasped, not in prayer, but in stillness. Like wax statues in black wool dot, at the front of the altar sat the red box. Untouched since the day of Sister Agnes Dot, but now open, only slightly. A sliver of black beneath the lid dot and on the altar. The missal dot, but not the church's. This one was bound in gray hide. Pages uneven. Ink unfamiliar. The priest hesitated, but something compelled him. He later told a confidant, it was not obedience. It was hunger, not mine, theirs. He began the Mass, but the words were not his own, not the Introibo, not the Kyrie, not even the Sanctus. They were Latin, but twisted, sentences with no subject, prayers without objects. The altar boy tried to follow, but could not. He remembered only one phrase repeated again and again. Non sum corpus, said fiat. I am not the body, but let it be so got, and then the chalice. Poured not with wine, but something thicker, darker, left for them on the altar, already uncorked. The priest did not question it. He drank. He said the words, and the sisters began to hum, low, dissonant, like bees moving in circles. The veil of the sister closest to him fluttered slightly, not from wind. There was no wind dot, but from something beneath. Something shifting. The boy turned away, and that's when he heard it. Not a scream, not a cry. Just a soft clicking sound, like bone tapping wood. He would later claim he saw the shadows on the walls move out of rhythm with their owners, as if each sister had two, one of flesh, and one of something else. By the final rite, the priest's voice was hoarse, not from age, but from strain. The words, whatever they were, scraped his throat. He finished with one last breathless line, fiat rubra, fiat una, let it be read, let it be one, and the chapel fell silent. No hymn, no dismissal, just the extinguishing of every candle, one by one, though no one moved. The boy never went back. He fled before sunrise. Never again entered the priesthood. The priest, however, returned to the rectory. Quiet, calm. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He wrote only one note. Found later tucked into his book of hours. They gave me their silence. I gave them my tongue. 3 days later, the sexton found something nailed to the church door. A piece of flesh, curled, cleaned, still damp. At first, he thought it was an animal organ. Then he saw the tip, and the clean, even nail that held it fast. A human tongue, a nail driven through its center, polished black. No rust. It had been flattened first, pressed between two boards perhaps, but the blood had already clotted. There was no note, no confession, and no signs of forced entry. Father Jacknet was never seen again. His room was untouched, vestments folded, shoes still damp. Only the altar missal was missing. The bishop ordered the matter closed. The door was cleaned, the tongue buried, unblessed, at the edge of the cemetery. But something wasn't right. That Sunday, when Mass resumed, the new priest noticed the crucifix was gone, not stolen, removed. The wall behind the altar showed no dust where it had hung, as though nothing had ever been there. And outside, in the garden, the lily had bloomed early, all red. Blood red. The petals wilted at the edges. They would never bloom again. That night, the bell rang 6 times, but not from the chapel, from the cemetery. The paper had yellowed with time, thin, dry, curled at the corners like something once alive. But the ink, dark, deliberate, had not faded. The letters were found in 1948 during the gutting of a parish rectory 2 towns over. Beneath the floorboards, tied in black twine, folded with care no longer remembered, 17 pages, all written by the same hand, signed at the bottom of each, Sorer Lucilla, Sister Lucille, a name long scrubbed from the rolls of St. Mercia. And yet, there she was, writing not to a superior, not to family dot, but to no one. The first letter opens with a warning. If you find this, I am not gone. I am only beneath. She does not explain what she means. She simply begins, describing the prayers, the changes, the sounds. She writes, we no longer kneel. The stone is too soft. We press our foreheads to it, and it gives like bread. She notes that the prayers have changed, that the words are no longer from Scripture, but from memory. Memory not hers. She does not name the new masses, only calls them the red ones, and writes that they are always held underground, in the room behind the bell tower, a room no longer listed on the convent's plans, a room that, by all accounts, should not exist. In another letter, she describes a sister who does not blink, not in sunlight, not during chance, not even while sleeping. She writes, I watched her for 7 nights. She stares at the ceiling as though waiting, and when the bells ring, even before they ring, her mouth begins to move. The words come early. She finishes before the last toll. But something wasn't right. Because in the following letter, Sister Lucille writes that this same nun, whom she calls Agatha, no longer walks. She glides. She describes it plainly. No drama, no emotion. Her feet do not touch the stone. There is no step, no shift of weight. Only the sound, not of skin, not of cloth, but of snapping, like chicken bones under linen. She later finds dust on the floor behind her. Not ash, not dirt. But the kind of dust found in ossuaries. Calcium, flake, bone. And when she follows the trail one night, against the rule of silence, it leads not to a bed, but to the red box, still sealed, still waiting. She does not open it. She does not dare. The tone of the letters begins to shift, from observation to pleading. She writes, I do not know what we pray to anymore. It is not the Christ. It is not the Virgin. There is no warmth, only hunger. And then ... More unsettling still. She begins to speak of the voice. It comes from the walls, not from inside them, not through cracks, from within the stone itself. She first hears it behind the chapel, in the hallway where the choir veils used to hang. A low humming, like someone praying underwater. But then it changes, becomes clearer, closer. She writes, it does not call my name. It calls a name, one I have never heard. But my mouth knows how to shape it. She tries to write the word. Each attempt is crossed out, black ink smeared, one page torn nearly in half. Later, she reports a sister who has not eaten in weeks. No signs of starvation, no weight lost. But she never speaks. She only stands outside the dormitory each morning, palms out, mouth closed, and eyes, wrong. They move, she writes, but they do not blink. They roll, like marbles in shallow bowls. Then the most disturbing detail. She begins to dream. Not of visions, not of angels or flames, but of the chapel stairs. In the dreams, she descends them, one at a time, always barefoot, always carrying something warm and wet in her hands. She cannot describe it, only that it pulses, that it is alive. Each night, she wakes up with her hands clenched. Each morning, blood under her fingernails. She writes, I do not remember what I did, but the sister who walks on bones will not look at me anymore. The final letter is short, 3 lines. They do not sleep now, none of them. They hum all night. I have found the voice, and it knows my name. And that's where the pages end. No final signature, no farewell, only the deep groove of her pen, pressed into paper. Investigators who examined the letters noted they were written with precision. No signs of madness, no ranting, no repetition, just clarity. Even in fear, even as the world around her twisted into something unholy, the letters were never published. They were quietly archived, filed under apocryphal testimonials. But one scholar, decades later, recognized the phrase she used, ... prayers and blood, not a metaphor, a reference. It appears in a banned text from 15th century Carcassonne. A rite said to summon a presence called Red Mercy. No known liturgical use, no saint attached, only silence. And yet, each of Sister Lucille's letters ends the same way. Not with scripture, not with prayer, just one sentence. Written backward. As if not meant to be spoken aloud. We are the womb that sings. And below it, ... a single red fingerprint, pressed too hard, smudged, but human. The page it stains is the only one warm to the touch. The door to the Mother Superior's chamber had not been opened in 3 days. Dust gathered beneath it in a crescent. Windless, untouched, and the wax seal on the threshold remained unbroken. When the sisters finally entered, they found the windows shuttered, not by wood or glass, but by pages. Hundreds of pages, pasted across the panes with wax and blood, every line filled with the same word, sacrament. In early ledgers, Mother Philomena's handwriting was admired, tight, precise, balanced between lines. She was known to correct the calligraphy of younger nuns, known to spend hours scraping parchment until it was smooth enough for her quill. But this ... this page was not careful. It was frantic, pressed too hard. Ink pooled, edges blurred. Still, every word ... sacrament, sacrament, sacrament. No punctuation, no margin, only repetition. From the first line to the very last . All identical, except one. Halfway down, a slip of the pen, a stray mark across the R, a line that curls inward. As if a hand began to draw a second word, but caught itself and collapsed. A visiting archivist from the diocese found the page in 1902, sealed in the back of a record book. He believed it to be a penance, some ritual of repentance, but then he noticed the stained dot at the bottom of the page. Just right of center, not ink, not wax, a fingerprint, pressed deep into the parchment, burned in, not singed, scorched. It had gone through 2 pages, charred the leather binding, and left no ash. But something wasn't right. Because beneath that fingerprint, ... on the table where the book had been found, there was no mark, no scorch, no imprint of heat. Only the page had burned. The archivist made one copy, filed it in the diocesan vault, but the copy came out warped. The ink ... printed clean ... began to smudge. The letters doubled, and then ... blurred ... until all that remained was a pattern that, when rotated, resembled a spiral, a descending spiral. With a center that never stopped moving. He never tried to replicate it again, but the original remained, tucked behind rosary invoices and repair records. Left UNSTUDIED. Until 1937. A Jesuit scholar, Father Antoine Levesque, rediscovered the ledger during a reclassification of minor orders. He was meticulous, not prone to superstition. He labeled the entry plainly: erratic monastic record, non-doctrinal, likely psychological. But 4 days later, he submitted his resignation, citing vocal strain and memory lapses. In his private notes, one sentence stood alone: "If this is sacrament, then we were never baptized." He died the following winter, tongue removed during an autopsy. Though no incision was ever made, the page itself became a quiet taboo, moved, filed, moved again, but never destroyed, because each time it was nearly burned. The flame would not take. Not fully. The edges curled, but the ink remained, like it had soaked deeper than the page, deeper than the leather. as if the word had become part of the object. And then the question came, not why, but who wrote. The first one? Because Mother Philomena, though head of the order, was not known for writing doctrine. She was known for silence, not vow-bound, not muted dot, but chosen silence. For 30 years, she spoke only during Mass, only in Latin, only what was required dot, her voice dot dot when her dot was described by one visiting sister as the sound of a stone dragged across water. No letters, no diaries, no Mirginali except for this dot one page. Sacrament, sacrament, sacrament dot, and the fingerprint, pressed in heat, not from fire, but from within. A nurse assigned to the convent in 1899, one of the few allowed inside after the fever outbreak, described a strange smell in the superior's chamber dot, not rot, not mold dot, but incense, burned past sweetness dot, as if something holy had died. She did not see Mother Philomena, was told the superior had taken to fasting, that she required darkness. The nurse never returned. She told her niece later, I believe she wasn't inside the room anymore. I believe she was beneath it. What that meant dot dot. She never clarified, only said it in a whisper. And only once dot in 1972, the convent ledger was digitized. Volunteers typed each entry by hand, scanning for any patterns, any useful historical data. They reached the page, tried to transcribe it, but the document refused to load. Lines disappeared. Computers froze. No image could be retained. One technician managed to print a low-resolution copy. He marked the bottom. Fingerprint, visibly embedded. Looks human, possibly ritualized. He circled it, then left for the day. That night, he called the office. In distress, he claimed the print on the page matched his own dot-identical dot down to the ridge. But when examined by police, his finger bore no burn, no mark, only a slight tremor that never left. The page is now sealed, encased in glass, filed under restricted access at the diocesan archive. But still, those who've seen it dot, 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 even briefly dot, dot, dot report the same thing. The letters appear to move, not fast, not violently, but with slow, almost imperceptible shift dot, as if each sacrament were breathing. In, out dot, waiting dot, and somewhere behind it, behind the repetition, behind the page, a silence grows. Not absence of sound, but a silence that wants. And beneath that silence, a heat, still faint, still warm, not still burning. The hills of St. Mercia do not tremble easily. The soil is old, dense, packed with salt and root. But on the night of June 3rd, 1931, the earth exhaled. Locals said it began with a pressure in the lungs, like breathing inside a bell jar, silent, still. And then dot dot, a sound, not thunder, not stone, but bone, a cracking deep beneath the chapel grounds, a split, slow and sharp, like a rib separating from cartilage dot at 3:11 a.m. A minor earthquake, dot dot dot, magnitude 3.8, was recorded 20 miles northeast. But at Redgrave Hill, the damage was precise, targeted. The vaults beneath the convent cracked open. A fissure split the marble slabs that sealed the Redgrave tombs, and the air changed. A smell, sweet at first, and rotting, like myrrh spilled. In stagnant water, two shepherds reported it. They were first on the scene, drawn not by curiosity, but by the noise. One would later say, it sounded like someone breathing through teeth, but deep down, like under the floor. They found the vault doors ajar. No signs of collapse. No fallen stone just opened. Cleanly, evenly, as though invited inside, the air was thick. The candles along the chapel walls, all unlit had melted. But something wasn't right because there had been no candles in the chapel since 1906. Investigators arrived the next morning. Diocesan officials, local police, 2 men from the university. They descended the vault steps in silence. 47 in total. Each carved by hand. Each worn at the center. The temperature dropped the deeper they went. A humidity that clung to the tongue. A silence that made breathing feel intrusive. Inside, they expected coffins, stone tombs, sealed crypts, but the room was open. No sarcophagi, no caskets, just rows of habits, laid out like skin, folded with reverence, stacked in pairs, dozens of them, perfectly clean, pressed flat, but no bodies. No bones, no teeth, no trace of decay. Only the cloth. And the walls, the inner walls of the vaults, had been carved, not with tools. With fingernails, dozens of them, shallow at first, then deeper. Each mark etched in frantic rows. No language, no symbols. Just panic. One wall bore 7 grooves running vertically from floor to ceiling, parallel, evenly spaced. When measured, they matched the width of human hands. Investigators found no fingerprints, but small fragments of keratin lodged in the stone. Human, female. As though someone had tried to claw their way upward for days or longer, but no human voice was ever heard. No record of screams, only the sound. One officer noted in his report, it was like the stone had been crying. He resigned 1 week later, claimed his ears still rang at night, not from sound, from silence. Another officer, a younger man, took photographs, but when developed, the images came back blurred, not out of focus, distorted. As though the air itself had bent the lens. In every photo, the habits appeared to move, not dramatically, just slightly, edges lifted, seams curled. As if stirred by breath or something deeper. And that's when they found the plaque. Small, copper, bolted into the rear wall. It read, "Let silence dress them, let breath complete them." There was no record of who placed it, no signature, no date, only a smear beneath it, black, oily, warm to the touch. The room was sealed the following morning, poured over with concrete, blessed 3 times. But 2 years later, the grass that grew above it turned white, not pale, white, bleached from the root, crackling underfoot like brittle paper. A geologist brought in from Marseille suggested chemical leaching, a rare mineral, a unique pressure in the stone. He returned weeks later to collect samples, but never arrived. His car was found on the edge of the property, keys in the ignition, notebook in the passenger seat, open to a sketch of the vault. Drawn in tight, shaking lines, and underneath it. 2 words underlined twice. They breathed. The vault remains sealed, its location omitted from all recent maps. But locals say the air still shifts their. Soft currents on windless days. A change in pressure, a faint sound, not voices, not song. Just the deep, slow pull. Of something remembering how to inhale. The wind does not carry birdsong near St. Mercia. Even in summer, even in bloom, the convent sits gray and low against the hillside, its slate roof eaten thin by decades of salt air. No vines grow up its sides, no ivy clings to the stone, only stillness, and the pale mark of water lines that rise no higher than the kneeling bench at the entry altar. In 1956, the Archbishop of Lyons submitted a formal request to the Vatican. He asked that the grounds be re-sanctified, the last rites re-performed, the bells, if found intact, restored. There was no reply, not for 3 weeks. Then, a sealed envelope, no papal seal, no signature. Only the emblem of the congregation for the doctrine of the faith, and within it, a single line, typed without salutation. The site is not to be reopened, it is to be remembered. Nothing more. The Archbishop asked again. This time, in person, he traveled to Rome, bringing with him fragments. One, a piece of scorched parchment. Another, a strip of cloth from a recovered habit. And a photograph, faint, blurred, of the Redgrave vaults after the earthquake. He was received, but not by the Holy Office. Instead, 2 clerics from the Archivum Secretum took him into a side chamber beneath the Apostolic Palace. What they showed him has never been disclosed, but when he returned to Lyon, he was changed. He no longer celebrated Mass, no longer entered the cathedral. He walked the gardens of the Archdiocese for hours at a time, whispering only one word, over and over, even when no one was near: sacrament. And then he requested one final act, that the convent be sealed, not blessed, not demolished, just closed. Removed from the map. The Vatican approved this request within the hour. Unusual. Speed. And they sent men. Not clergy. Not laborers. Men in dark cassocks. Faces unfamiliar to the diocese. Unmarked vehicles. They arrived before dawn. 12 in total. No records remain of their names. No permits were filed. Only the plaque. Set into the stone above the chapel doors. Polished marble, white as milk. Letters carved by hand, flawless. It reads, "Here lies what once prayed." No date, no citation. Just those 6 words. And beneath it, ... Sealed mortar 2 feet thick. Concrete poured over stone. Iron rods cross-welded through the doorframe. The hinges buried under black pitch. And behind the walls. Silence. Not the kind that invites reverence. The kind that waits. A worker who helped pour the seal claimed the air inside changed as they worked. That it grew colder, wetter. And that, at one point. As he leaned to guide the last flow of mortar, he heard something. Not speech, not breath. A single sound, like nails on wet marble. Slow, dragging, deliberate. He never returned to the site. And 3 years later, when asked about the plaque, he said, "I don't think it meant the sisters. I think it meant the place." In 1974, a group of seminary students attempted to break the seal. They believed the stories were myth, that the vaults held secrets of the old rites, books, relics, buried knowledge. They brought tools, lighting. One even carried an old map, a copy of the 1889 layout. They made it 18 inches into the stone before the drill jammed. The bit bent, and the walls began to sweat. Condensation formed across the plaque, but the air was dry. The day... hot. One student described a sudden taste. In his mouth, iron, like coin against the tongue. Another vomited on the stone. They left before nightfall. And in the days that followed, none could recall what the inside of the convent looked like. Not one window, not one corridor. Only the door. The 6 words. The Vatican never commented. But one retired Monsignor, when asked about the refusal, said this: "The Church does not refuse out of fear, only recognition. There is no longer any mention of St. Mercia in official Roman directories. No entry in the registry of cloistered orders. No name among the Redgrave family holdings. It is as if it never existed, but the land remains, still quiet, still marked, still sealed. Visitors who stand before the plaque often report a strange sense of weight, not pressure, but gravity, a feeling that the ground behind the wall dips slightly, like a long-drawn empty dot, and some say they hear something when the wind is low, not voices, not prayer, but the creak of rope, the brush of cloth on stone. As if the air behind. The seal still shifts, still waits, and in that waiting, remembers, because what was buried there, ... What once prayed, ... has not stopped. It has only gone still. For now, the road to St. Mercia had cracked by 1982, weathered by decades of erosion, heat, and neglect. Ferns pushed through the gravel like veins through skin, but she still drove it. Eleanor, Redgrave, the last of the bloodline, not by inheritance, but by pursuit. She was not raised with stories. She found them in ledgers, in locked drawers, in footnotes buried behind decades of silence. She believed in redemption, in historical truth, and she believed the convent could be saved. What remained of it stood like a half-swallowed tooth in the hills, its foundation split in places, The plaster peeled away in long curling sheets, but the marble plaque had not aged. Here lies what once prayed, still cold, still unshipped. She arrived with a plan, and with permission, archival clearance from the university, letters from the diocese, even a signed waiver from the regional council. The seal was broken by hand. Over 3 days, the workers refused to enter. They broke the concrete, drilled the bars, removed the plate, but stopped at the door. She thanked them and went in alone. The doors opened easier than expected. No rust, no hinge sound, only the low sigh of air. Not fresh, not ancient. Just still. She brought a journal, a torch, a recorder. The first entry was brief. She noted the temperature. Colder than forecast. The smell. Faint, sweet, and the sense of moisture on the walls. Not from leaks, but condensation, like breath. The second entry came the next day. Her handwriting was smaller, more compressed. She described the chapel as intact, but distorted. Pews warped slightly at the base. Stone appeared soft in places. The floor sloped downward where no slope had been. Before she found no bones, no objects, except one, a book, lying flat in the pulpit. Not moldy, not dusty, but damp. As if it had just been placed there. She didn't touch it. The final entry was dated 3 days later. Only 8 words. The altar is breathing. I can hear it. After that, nothing. The search began quietly. First the university, then the local police, then the diocese. No sign of her. The car still parked on the road, doors locked, keys inside. The workers questioned. No memory of seeing her re-emerge. No footprints in the dust. Inside the chapel, the air had changed, the sweet scent gone, replaced by something metallic, thin. And on the altar. Curled in a loose spiral. Was a rosary, not laid, not dropped. Curled. Like it had arranged itself. No dust on it, no corrosion. The chain untwisted, each bead aligned. As if it had been held gently and then set down. The altar beneath it had shifted, not cracked, not damaged. Just risen. By half an inch. The stone felt warmer to the touch, but not by surface. From within. The investigators left it. They sealed the chapel again. No new plaque, no new rites. Just silence. And the rosary still there, unclaimed, unmoved. In the years that followed, no further attempts were made to reopen the convent. The name Redgrave faded from directories. Her estate was never contested, and the land remains listed as uninhabitable due to atmospheric instability. But in 1991, a letter was received, unmarked, no return address. Typed. It read, "There is no echo in the chapel now, only breath." It was signed E.R. No verification, no trace. Rosary, when examined later under infrared scan, showed no human oil, no skin residue, no heat signature. But the beads themselves had shifted. One had cracked, not broken. Just open. And inside. Pressed between the two halves of the smallest bead was a single hair, white, curled. As though grown. Not placed. Beneath it, a flake of something darker, not blood, not ash. But skin, still soft. As if it had not yet finished being shed. The convent stands sealed again. The door bricked in. The plaque returned. The grass outside no longer grows. Only a narrow circle of dirt. Circular, like the curl of the rosary. Where nothing will take root. And at night, some say they hear something new. Not sound, not music, a rhythm, slow, even, steady. Like the ticking of prayer beads on a marble. Slab. Counted. One by one. In the dark. We often believe silence is holy, but silence can also be chosen by those who wish to bury truth. The Redgrave Convent remains closed, not by nature, but by decree. Ask yourself, what else have we sealed in prayer, hoping it never answers back?